It's 6:32 PM, and I would like to call the meeting of HCDC to order. So the second item on our agenda is the consideration of the meeting minutes from October 20th of 2022. Are there any edits or corrections to the minutes? If not, may I have a motion to approve the October 2022 HCDC minutes?
So moved. I can't just approve it outright, I guess, can I? So moved.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item number 3, we have public comment of items not on the agenda. Are there any public comments for items not on the agenda? If there aren't any public comments, we'll move straight to agenda item number 4, the fiscal year 24 legacy aid to agencies funding discussion. I would propose that we look at the November HCDC funding template and start with the top scoring agencies based on the HCDC average scores and work our way down the list. We can fill in the funding as we go and come back through and make changes at the end as needed. And I would like to just set a reminder that we're not actually voting on these today. However, we're seeing if we can come to a consensus, and we'll be voting in the January meeting. So looking at our November HCDC funding template, it looks like the highest scoring was Shelter House.
Is anyone opposed to me trying to turn the lights down to see if you can see that better?
Please.
Try
that
it
would
and see.
help.
Is that too dark?
Which column is it that we're looking at?
Green is the one we need to fill in.
Okay. So Kayla, how do you want to handle this?
I would just like to see if we can come to a consensus. Like with Shelter House, for example, it looks like we have 100% recommendation. And I feel that what I saw at the last one is that Shelter House has done a good job of fulfilling on their obligations. And that's kind of my standpoint. So I would like to just open it up for discussion as to how others feel and see if we can come to a consensus so that we can vote on it at the next meeting.
I agree. I think that's the way to go with the top scores. There seems to be consensus on several of the applications, so. I do have a question, though. So when you look at the budget, and then if an agency is, the minimum allocation is to be 15,000, this is hard, because if you look at the budget, then obviously we can't fund every body at 100%, every agency at 100%. So what is that a hard and fast policy, the 15,000?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, I believe it's in our consolidated plan.
okay, thanks.
So can I jump ahead and ask, the ones that are below 15,000, is that something we vote on?
No, we can't do it.
Or do they just not get any funding, the ones that didn't make the 15,000?
You would have to decide on a minimum of 15,000. You could choose to not fund them, or you could fund a higher amount than 15,000, but the minimum award amount would be 15,000.
But didn't I notice on here that there's a couple that are below 15?
You're
What happens
correct.
to
Yeah.
those agencies?
Those are just average scores. So this is just combining what we received, or average funding recommendations. So if somebody
Okay.
funded a 0 and somebody funded a 15, we just took the averages and filled this column in.
Okay, so it can be maneuvered a little bit.
Yeah, you would need to adjust that.
The questions, we had very little discussion last month. It was kind of sad. But the questions that I clarified last month were that it is 15,000 minimum. We can make decisions to lower funding recommendations as long as we don't go below that 15,000. That,
I'm guessing if we decide that the agencies that are listed below 15,000, then we take money away from other agencies to fill in that extra 5,000, if we decide on 15.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I do have one question. I couldn't remember when we had, because I know that we are we allowed to spend over what is the recommended amount that we need to spend, 721,000?
713,925, right, is what we have available to award.
713 was calculating the total pot we estimated out, and then the maximum amount for emerging agencies is 5%. So 5% came out to about $37,000. The last couple years, the standard pot for that has been about $30,000. So depending on what you decide, we recommended the emerging aid to agencies budget at $30,000, which would free up some money for legacy agencies, and that total budget would be $721,000.
Well, I haven't finished my question yet. So did we, I remember a funding round that we didn't spend all the money. Was that emerging agencies where we didn't spend the entire 30,000?
I don't remember that.
Was it last year, maybe?
Sometime in the last 12 months.
Yeah, so last year we didn't do a legacy allocation, and whatever we didn't spend went to the legacy agencies. We kind of reallocated that funding.
I know we didn't do a legacy agency allocation. I'm clear on that. But I do remember doing some funding and we didn't spend the entire amount. And I wanted to know if we are, I guess I'm getting to the question, if we want to lower the amount for emerging agencies because we want to spend more, are we allowed to do that, or are we not allowed to do that?
Yeah, you can lower it. So our regulations say up to 5%.
Okay.
So you guys have the ability to recommend something.
I just want all the rules. Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, we can start like you suggested, but I don't think it doesn't mean that it's not going to be changed, you know. So are you suggesting that we go ahead and, for the top scoring, the ones we had consensus on, we put those scores in for right now? Is that what Caleb?
I will say, I know mine was a late handout, and I apologize. I called Brianna earlier this week that I just didn't have a chance to get to it. I mean, my recommendation is if you were in the 90-plus percentile, I funded you completely. I gave everybody that was in the 70th or below 80, I gave all of them the bare minimum. And then everybody else in between, I allocated from the standard deviation of what I got on the mean there, which is about 82%. So everybody got funded 82% of what they're required. I mean, we talk about, I've heard people hound about we've got to be objective, and I don't know how you do it. I mean, my opinion is the people that shine, I feel, I mean, these 90-plus members should get their full allocation. That's where I came down, and I know that's not, I know staff recommended, I think, only 64 for, was it neighborhood centers? Yeah, but 100% for the others. No, free medical only got 92, I guess, or 87%.
My problem is the application itself. I think the application has so flawed, and until we correct that,
Well, but that's the only thing I have to go from.
well,
So-
I'm sorry, but, you know, a few months ago, we went through the application. There were very few recommendations to change. A lot of the agencies cannot provide demographics because of the way it's set up. It didn't get changed because United Way didn't change it. So I don't think we can go based on that. And I absolutely will not support increasing funding to an agency and by taking away to another. I won't support that at all.
Wait, I'm confused. I mean, then how can we can't come up with any numbers without somebody losing and somebody winning.
I'm not saying I won't take away, but I won't take money from an agency just for the reason of giving it to another because the score's higher. Because I don't think that application, needs a lot of work.
I
We
think
had-
every application deserves at least the bare minimum. We sat in here and voted, I didn't vote for it, but we voted as a group to allow new legacy agencies in.
Does every
made a
application,
mistake.
how about the applications that are late? Do they deserve the same treat?
Yes.
Oh, see, I disagree with you. I think the
I
applications
took
that
that
are
into
late.
consideration. If they're late, they sure didn't get high scores, they still get the bare minimum. Yeah. But you just said you're gonna give them nothing.
Right.
Right. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
I don't think tonight's a good time to refine the application. We
Well, I
have,
know we can't. I mean, we discussed that at the last meeting. That's what I sent those emails out for, and I called you and we had a conversation about, nothing ever happened, so we're going to talk about it in January. But I can't, I still have to give some consideration to the fact that the application process is flawed, because it does not allow all agencies to put the kind of information about services that we need in there. And that's why we have to have the follow-up questions, you know. I'll hold up Table to Table as an example. They don't fit that demographic or that application in terms of reporting their numbers, but they provided substantial information and a follow-up to us. We were just looking for something that we needed from them to be able to tell, you know, what was going on with their services. I'm not going to give them low scores because they couldn't fill out that application because of the way that it's set up. It's wrong that application is set up so that everybody can't report. And that's what I want to look at. Eventually, we can't do that now. So I won't use the application or the application and its scores as 100% indication of what they should be receiving.
I understand your frustration about the application, but like you said, it's what we have to work with right now.
I know.
And we can work on changing it in the future if we want. But right now, our task is to figure out, you know, to do the best we can. For those of us who've been involved in this process for some time, it can hardly ever be 100% objective. I mean, you know, people have different thoughts and different relationships with different agencies, and it's a hard process to do. But we have what we have, and we are where we are, and that's what we have to work with.
I agree with Kyle about awarding fund to the all organization.
Can you
I
speak
wonder-
into the microphone, please?
I agree with Kyle on funding the lower application, the bare minimum amount, which is 15,000. If you look at the scoring criteria here, it's not favorite the new organization who joined legacy as a legacy. For example, the leveraging funds. If you don't have more money to leverage for the project, we will get lower score. Also, on the experience, if you don't get funded previously by the city, also you will get lower score. That will make it hard for the new organization to get funded. For the late application, the application already accepted by the staff. So I don't think that should be an issue. If it is hard rules, they shouldn't be accepted and they shouldn't be presented to us here. As long as the application are accepted by the staff, and I think we should fund it.
I had trouble with the leveraging funds. Brianna, is that the one I had trouble with, and you gave me a formula to use? Yeah.
So
So it could be applied to everybody fairly, I felt. Perhaps we need some, in future, we need some training of the HCDC commissioners. I really think that that would be a wise thing to do. We can look at that next year when we peel the layers back on this process.
Can you explain to us this, the leveraging fund, how this formula works?
the criteria. Do you remember offhand?
I don't have it in front of me, but we took their total, I think we looked at the amount they're requesting and the total budget and what percentage of the total budget they're requesting, assuming that, because all the other funds are being leveraged for this program.
So if the percentage is higher, you will get lower score, right?
The way it's scored, there wasn't a lot of difference amongst agencies. I believe everyone got the same score because everyone has,
Right.
is leveraging quite a bit of funds.
That's correct. Looking at this now, the only agency that did not receive full points on this, I believe, was Inside Out Reentry, because the percentage that they were asking for was such a high percentage of their budget.
Yep.
That makes sense.
So I probably misunderstand that, because in my grading, if the organization has higher percentage on the amount request, I will give them lower score.
There is discretion in here. It's written into the scoring criteria that you can have some discretion on how you score it. That's how we chose to look at it. I do think that the answers on this score sheet could be written out more clearly next year. So that's something that I wrote in there, but that's not something that we thought was a disadvantage for new agencies, I guess. We didn't score them lower based on the fact that they were new. We looked at the percentage of their request against the total budget.
If we look at the total HCDC average funding recommendation, we're under that budget. So, you know, there is some money to work with. It's not a lot, but it could get the new legacy agencies at least up to the minimum and still be within the budget.
I'm sorry, I'm just finding that, what column should I be looking at?
I'm looking at,
You're looking at staff recommendations?
I think you're looking at the blue columns, Marianne, at the bottom
Yeah,
where we
I'm at-
have extra funds to allocate.
17,000.
Okay, thank you.
And when we can enter things in here and change them, I know it's probably intimidating to put it in the spreadsheet, but it doesn't have to be permanent. If you want to throw out ideas, we can come back through it.
Well, I'm going to throw out an idea. Get things started here. I have a couple of changes, things that I've been concerned about. I'm going to draw attention to 4 organizations. I'm going to compare 2 at a time. Big Brothers Big Sisters and Dream City, where the number of clients that are served, I think Big Brothers Big Sisters is 123 clients. Dream City is 160 clients. I think that their allocation should be somewhat similar. That's why I think the staff recommendation maybe have been 15,000, am I correct, for Dream City? And I increased it to 25,000. That would put them more in line with Big Brothers Big Sisters, because actually they're serving more clients. So I'm looking at the way, what I'm looking at is the units of service. So that's one area. The other area that I have a lot of concern with is, well, the whole food insecurity issue is a big one for me. And we have 2 organizations that are providing meals. One is free lunch program. Now, you kind of got to do some work on figuring out, they don't really do demographic information for us. So, what I looked at is they serve an average of 92. I know they serve plates of food, but if I even consider those are individuals, I'm going to be a little generous. 92 individuals a day, 6 days a week, 52 weeks a year. Their numbers come out to about 92 per day. But I also then looked at Meals on Wheels, where I think they're serving 177 individuals in Johnson County, 4 meals a week. And the allocation is so different in terms of how much money. And that's why I changed them. I think I did lower free lunch program because I do think, I just basically think that some agencies are getting too high a percentage of their budget, and we need to lower that a bit. But then I also took a look at, did I recommend, I don't have it in front of me, is it 16,000 that I recommended for free lunch program?
I don't have your individuals.
Or no,
info
I think
in
it's
front of me.
18,000. And then, so I doubled that for Meals on Wheels, 36. But I couldn't see giving Meals on Wheels more than that. I read everything. I know they've got an $8 and something cost per meal to make. Half of it is refunded, or half of it they get back from the Older Americans Act or whatever it's called. But it's still a unit of service, and I think that it behooves us to take a look at what we're purchasing a little bit with some of these organizations that are providing similar types of services, or their output is somewhat similar. So.
You're calling Meals on Wheels, that's table to table?
Horizons.
Horizons.
That's Horizons,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Table to Table is an entirely different organization to
Yeah.
take a look at.
Well, what I was thinking is there are 5, 6 applicants, agencies, who have the same funding recommendation as the HCDC and staff. So I think plug those numbers in now, see where we are.
I thought we decided to do that already.
Which
Oh, well, we
ones were
haven't done it
those?
yet.
How many did you say? 5? 1, 2, 3.
I got, HACAP. Oh, wait. HACAP. And then, well, Community and Family Resources, because that would be nothing, 0.
HACAP is slightly different, 27,270 and 27,510.
Oh, you're right, sorry.
What was the other one you said?
Formerly Prelude, which is 0, so it's okay.
Okay.
Dream City.
Oh, Dream City.
So can we plug in, can we start with Horizons, Meals on Wheels? Meals on Wheels is Horizons, and free lunch program, and do,
Brianna, this doesn't include my numbers, right?
This does not.
Okay.
I did print that out for everybody, though, so everybody has a handout if you need to
I just,
reference
because I
it.
know I did recommend money to community, but that was all I was asking. Okay.
So you want Horizons and what? Free lunch?
yeah. I can't remember, did I do 18 and 36? I think I did.
Is there consensus on that, or how do we want to approach that?
Well, I think there's a big difference. I mean, they both serve, provide a valuable service. But I think the difference is that with free lunch, people have to get there themselves, and they can have lunch. And it's mine, and please correct me if I'm wrong. There's Horizons, on the other hand, has to have the transportation to get the food, deliver the food, and then they talked about in their application the ability to sort of, if somebody's elderly, to just do a quick welfare check, if you will. And I know free lunch does that, but there's transportation involved in Horizons and logistics that are different than free lunch. But again, they're both very valuable services. Everything is.
I did think about all that too, and they both have a volunteer element to it, because free lunch reduces some of its costs by food that's donated through the volunteer teams that cook for them, or if it's table to table that provides food. So I did consider that they both have that. But for 100 and, I could compare them with table to table. For 177 residents, their request is $47,000. I don't know how we can justify that. I don't.
Well, that's what they asked for, though. You
I
didn't give them
know.
more?
Well, I know. I don't know how we can justify that kind of cost for that program.
You mean it's too much?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
For
that's
which
why I
one?
lowered it.
Horizons.
Okay. Yeah, I was at the 38,000 number, a little actually lower than that on mine for Horizons.
Where to next, Caleb?
If the 47,000 is a little high for you, would you entertain the 38,000 that our scores have averaged to?
For Horizons? 38, yeah. It's, nothing's written in stone yet. I want to see how it plays out. But that's where my thinking is I'm trying to align this a little bit so that one organization, well, I'm going to back up a little bit. One of the things that concerns me is these numbers are in part, the starting numbers, what they're receiving now is in part because the Housing Commission a few years ago funded requests. Some agencies request a lot more, some agencies didn't because they didn't think they could get it. So I don't think the starting point is necessarily a good number. And that's why I kind of ignored that. And I started playing around with my own numbers. I looked at the services they provide to the community, and I compared them. How else could I do it? I had to compare them. If we have two organizations providing similar types of programs, I wanted to compare them and get them closer to, I guess, a funding number than what happened a few years ago with the Housing Commission. So that's kind of where I come from. I think the starting point with some of these agencies is wrong.
Okay, that seems fair. So perhaps we just plug in the 38,000 for Horizon and then work our way down. If there's a discrepancy, then we work it out and see where we're at and
Yep.
make adjustments from there. So it looks like our next one is table to table. I apologize, I don't have my glasses in tonight, but it looks like we have,
I think we missed free medical in here.
oh, sorry. Are we okay with, is that 36,651 for free medical?
Yeah.
I could go higher on that, but I'm okay with putting that figure in.
But again, if you look at the score, where are they? They're one of the highest scores.
Yeah. And there are an organization in our
And
group
then-
of organizations that does something that nobody else does. So it's not, can't really compare them with another organization, a funded organization. And they do a good job, and I think they do it with they're frugal, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Free man, I'd say so.
I've always felt that they were totally frugal in what they do, whether it's their building projects and, what they give to us. But, so I put 35,000 down for full disclosure, but I knew that I could easily be talked into going to full funding for them.
I do believe that it's valuable to point out that some of these agencies, like you were saying, are comparable to other agencies, and I think that it's important to consider what needs are only being met by one agency that's on this list right now. So for instance, there's nobody else providing medical care that we're funding right now, so it's valuable for us to consider that we can't take that money, reducing the money that we put towards the free medical clinic in this case, we can't put that towards that same need through another agency.
Yep, well put. Thank you.
Would it perhaps make sense to take some of our excess funds that we have remaining over and bump them up to perhaps about 40,000?
We could throw it in there. Nothing's
Yeah.
in stone at this point.
Right. I agree with that. What do we got?
And it looks like next we have table to table. That, to me, looks like 36,000.
38,000.
What was their request?
45.
I'm all for giving them 45, and I can tell you why if you want to hear. Well, we're facing a food crisis coming up, and we can't increase communities because they made an error. Well, I believe they probably made an error in their request. They requested an old number. Table to Table provides, how many organizations? I've had floating in my mind 25 plus, but I think it's 30 plus organizations in Iowa City with food. They've changed their, I'm trying to find my words because I'm not a member of that organization. They've changed the way in which they rescue food and get it out to an organization right away that further reduces waste. They have adapted their model so that they can rescue large quantities of food, which is extremely important to organizations. For every organization that they deliver food to, it saves that organization money. It's such a small, they have a small budget. If you look at their numbers on their budget, they've been doing, well, the pandemic has reduced numbers a little bit. I'm not concerned about that because there's lots of reasons for that. All food services kind of reduced numbers during the pandemic. But I think that with Table to Table, one of the things that concerns me is they are adapting and trying to do more to get the pantries and food sites and everything in Iowa City additional food, and they don't have much room to spare. Their fund balance is declining, and I'm a little concerned about that. If we cut them, as Kyle, I think you cut them down to 15.
What? Let me clarify. I did that strictly on the
Right.
issue. You talked about the United Way, which is their only low points were the demographic points.
Yep.
Right? That was the only reason.
Yep. And
I looked at this completely numerically and
Yep.
objectively based on what the United Way what that United Way application said, and I have absolutely no problem with the staff or the other individual scoring recommendations.
Okay.
Yeah.
All I know is I had to have a baseline, and that baseline is.
I get it.
If you can't get the numbers that we're supposed to judge on, then how can I judge on numbers that don't exist?
I get it,
Yeah.
and I'm not calling you out.
No, it's fine.
Except if we were going to cut them down, it could easily cost them a position, which means it's going to have a bounce effect to 30-plus organizations in Iowa City, and is going to result in them getting less food. So I'd actually like to entertain moving them all the way up to their ask.
My only issue with that is it's a 28% increase from the previous year.
And I go back
And
to-
this year, we're already 8% of their budget as it is. And you were talking about Horizons and them being similar. I mean, why wouldn't 38 be equitable between both? We just said Horizons, right, was 38.
It is in a way.
45 just seems like a big bump, especially when, as you said, it's going to take money from somebody else.
Kyle, it is in a way, but the other thing is you laugh, excuse me.
No, I mean, you
don't-
said we don't want to take money away from someone else, but
I
the
know.
hard decisions
No,
are
no,
giving them
no.
45,000 means we're gonna take
You're
it from someone else.
selectively hearing what I'm saying. I said I will not take money away from an organization just to fund another organization, give them more money. There has to be a reason for me to cut too big a percentage of their budget. But for a table-to-table, an organization like that, what do they rescue? 2 million, 2.5 million pounds of food? That also has value.
I don't disagree. I
That-
think 27% is a big bump.
I don't. And I'd like to entertain moving them up to 45,000.
At this point, I think we should leave him at the 38,258. That's 85% of the request.
Is there a consensus
Or
on one
even
of
put it at
those?
40 and see what we've got towards the end.
I agree with Kyle. I think we should put it in at 40 to
40.
mediate.
45 is a hard push for me, I guess. I don't know.
That's okay. I got us up there, so I'm happy.
What was the final number?
40?
40.
Then up next for Big Brothers Big Sisters, it looks like we were fairly close with staff.
Like $17.
Are we happy with the 27,142?
I can't do them without.
125 is the
No, that-
request. I mean, even,
So,
That's not what they asked for,
huh? 27,125 is what
is
we
what they
asked.
asked for.
Yeah, somehow our
think that's what we-
recommendation was $17 more than what they asked for.
So
I don't know how
think-
that happened.
I
we
think-
can't do that.
No, I think we should give him $27,125.
I would agree.
I can't talk about them without talking about Dream City. And why is Dream City at a 0?
It's
Dream
not.
City's at 15 at the
Are they?
At the minimum. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. Two similar organizations, are we willing to fund them the same?
And then up next, Habitat for Humanity.
I think, oh, well, go ahead.
I'm not going, I'll just object. I'm not going to agree with Big Brothers Big Sisters right now, so.
Okay.
You can go ahead, but I'm not going to agree with it. I don't want it to sound like I'm in a consensus of some sort.
So Habitat for Humanity, it looks like we came in a little under staff. We're at $27,029. Staff's at $28,044. Would we like to keep our $27,029 or adjust that?
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with our average.
I would also be content with the average. Looks like on 4Cs, we do have a little bit more of a variation. We're in at 24,915. Staff is 28,044, and their request was 30,000.
What's our average again?
24,918.
And what are they getting this year?
26,709.
So it would be a reduction. I'm concerned about that, as childcare is one of the huge issues. Huge problems. I'm concerned about cutting them.
I'm sorry, what'd they get last year?
26,709.
I would propose that we bump them up to 26 to help alleviate some of that variance between our recommendations and staff, as well as match what they had last year so that they're not bombarded with the reduction.
I think I could be okay with upping them up to where they were last year.
Yeah.
Do you want it exactly that number, or do you want it 26,000 even?
I would be fine with just 26,000 even for simplicity.
That's fine.
What was last year's funding?
26,709.
Can't we at least give them
I think
last
this
year?
is another situation that, like Michael just mentioned, where there are not a lot of childcare, at least out of this list of people. I will say 4Cs is the only one that, in my line of work, I've dealt with regularly, as far as like trying to get childcare in homes, or affordable childcare in homes around the city. I don't know if anybody else provides anything similar. I will say on my scoring sheet, they were even lower because of the fact, like I said, going from, from the numbers I did. But I would argue, if we are talking about providers that are providing a unique role, this is another provider that I think does provide a unique role in the list of legacy agencies. I would hesitate to give them less than what we've given them in prior years. I mean, I know we've talked, Marianne, you've talked in the past about, you set these budgets and, hopefully you at least maintain your money coming in and not lose your money coming in. I'm actually okay with staff's recommendation on this one, even though it's not really in line with the numbers I originally put down, but I'd actually be happy with the 28. It's not a big bump. It's
Yes.
not quite what they got, but, quite what they wanted, but.
And I can't remember the city's ARPA funding budget. Is that, does that include childcare?
There's a portion of the business development that I think will incorporate childcare, but I don't know that it's been finalized at this point.
And I know the state just came out with their preliminary ARPA funding administrative plan, which is a lot of money in the state. And a considerable amount is available for childcare. But who knows when those applications are going to be due and when they would be able to get the money. I mean, it could be another year or two. So I'm fine with either getting them to what they were last year or what the staff recommendation is, which is higher than last year.
I'd like to do the staff recommendation. I think, I just don't see a solid reason to give them, I don't even want to meet at what they have been getting. I think that that's a cut. So staff recommendation, I can't read it. So
28.
Okay,
was
thank
staff
you.
recommendation, yeah.
I agree. I think it's a unique organization. Cutting childcare right now just doesn't seem like a wise thing to do.
So throw 28 in. Does that work for you, Caleb?
That's fair to me.
That's fine.
Nasser?
Becky, there is a hard copy of this somewhere in that stack of papers, if that helps.
You
And
just won't mind? Because I'm just reading off there.
This
Yeah.
this is too
I
small for her.
probably have it
She can't read that.
Yeah.
You
I
can't read that.
I have all sorts of glasses. If you see me struggling with which glasses do I have on, I've tried to put two on pair on at once at some point.
Aging services, we're at 23,000. They requested 27, and staff recommended 27.
And this one I have some concerns about. I wish we could find out. I'm not finding them. I wish we could find out if they're receiving regular funding from ECR. So I look at their budget and pretty sure I've got the right one. Although they messed up the fund balance portion of it. What is the recommendation for funding?
From us, 23.
And they're consistently, they really aren't an organization that raises money. They're consistently underspending or spending under their revenue. And one of the questions that I have is, with their East Central mental health region, they're getting, fiscal year 22, they got about 29,000, fiscal year 23, 26,000. And are they getting that money? And I want to know if we need to really be funding them, if they're getting money from the region. And I'd like to know if we can find that out. I realize we had this question and answer session, but it was hard to get all those questions asked. But if not, I want to move them down to minimum funding 15,000. I'm going to throw that out. Because I do not think city funds should be used to build a fund balance. I think they should be used to provide services to our residents.
And in that regard, I mean, this is 1% of their budget. I mean, it is not.
Doesn't
I
matter.
mean, they are not dependent on city funds to maintain services, as Becky pointed out, with the existing fund in place. Yeah, I don't know.
Fiscal year '21, they had 12,000 revenue over expenses. Fiscal year '22, 64,000 revenue over expenses. Fiscal year '23, 35,000 revenue over expenses. And it's one thing if they're raising money and building a fund balance, but this is different for me. They have a small amount, maybe less than $3,000, it looks like that they're really raising money. So if they did receive ECR funding to help with services, then I'm not sure that aid agencies should be funding them anymore. So that's a huge question for me.
It is concerning that they are building a fund balance, that they're not using all of their money every year. And so it does pose the question, like you said, should we be giving them money that they're potentially and likely to just bank and not use? And so when you put it that way, it made me think of the agency and their request differently.
So staff, what can we do? Can we find that out? If that, I mean, because some ECR money is been ARPA money, I get that, but this is, otherwise I'm going to recommend 15, the flat minimum, and I could go to 0 easy. If we have difficulty, I would recommend 0.
I would be comfortable with the 15. I have, from the standpoint of us, of the concept of a legacy agency in place, once again, I have a hard time personally not doing a minimum outlay to those organizations that have been established as legacy agencies in town. I know we're gonna have a disagreement on this. I just
we are.
think at some point they've gone through the process. A commission and the staff said yes, they have longstanding relationships with the city, they have longstanding relationships with the county. I happen to know that Aging Services are formerly Pathways. Like, I know how much they work with Jeff at Aging Services over at Johnson County. I mean, I see that work, so I get, yeah, I get why that relationship exists as a legacy agency. I think the 15,000 is a minimum, keeps them, I guess, in that agency status and in that agency concept of they are worthy of funding. However, in a time where we are dealing with adding 5 agencies and having a smaller pool for everybody, it makes sense that somebody like Aging Services, Pathways, whatever they're called, formerly Pathways, doesn't need from us a funding as requested in the amount that will help them get through this year. And that's where I came on it. I would be comfortable with the 15,000 as the minimum funding for Aging Services this year. I wouldn't be comfortable with 0. That's where I'm at.
I agree with 15,000.
I would agree with that.
I think my recommendation was 15,000, but I still would like that
Right, no,
question
yeah,
answered.
That's what I'm saying. I'm with Becky.
Yeah.
I would be happy with the 15.
I think I can agree with that. I do want to say that on some of these, I've been also having the thoughts that this is supposed to be sort of a consistent revenue source. Part of the reason I'm particularly not as concerned with this on this is, like you said, it is such a small percentage of their budget in the first place, and they are putting away money. But I just want to say that in general, I suppose I have some slight concerns about radically reducing.
I can't really hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So repeat everything.
Sorry, let me see if I can. I guess I'm saying I think I can stand behind that, but I just want to generally say on some of these that I have concerns in general about radically cutting budgets that have been there consistently, just because it is my understanding this is supposed to be a consistent revenue fund. Part of the reason I'm particularly not as concerned about it in this case is because, like you said, it is such a small percentage of their budget, and they are putting money away, and there's other agencies that it seems could possibly need this money more. I just wanted to make that statement.
Well, if we go down the rest of the list and put,
Speak in your microphone.
if we go down to the rest of this list, if I'm doing my math correctly, which I could very well not be, and put 15,000 in every remaining applicant, then we would only have $7,970 to spend to still be within the budget.
Do you want me to enter that to C, or how do you want to proceed?
Yeah, we could.
Could check my math.
Obviously, don't change the other 2 that we already have in, but.
What's this, Horizons?
Oh,
Oh, they like
Big Cat
that.
goes crazy.
This one too?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What are you yang to? I can't see
I think-
anything, so it makes me
I
a
said
little
if
bit
it-
nervous here.
37,000.
37,000, okay.
For what?
If we were to fund everybody at the minimum, everybody who
Oh.
applied, because what Kyle's saying is they've gone through the process, they've been approved as a legacy agency, and so the minimum they have to get is 15. Okay, so that then, we'll see, but that But she didn't put 15 into ACAP, she
No,
put 38. So
wait,
anyway,
wait,
No, we were at, that's because we'd already approved that one earlier.
Wait.
okay, all right.
Last
Put
month,
15 in.
I
My mouth wasn't
clarified
totally
this, and the questions I ask, we don't have to, just because it's a legacy agency does not mean that they have to continue getting funding. In fact,
This was just Mary Ann just seeing what those numbers would mean.
Okay.
We're
Yeah,
not putting, we didn't agree to it or put those numbers in.
No.
She just wanted to see what would remain if everybody was at a minimum.
I mean,
So, and we could take that right back out.
Oh, no, it kept on there. One row is a duplicate.
I think I
For
fixed
that
it.
statement to be true, all the ones above that line would also have to go to 15,000 if we funded everybody.
no.
No, she was
I'm
just wondering
going-
what it would equal. It was just a curiosity number thing.
I'm just going by the budget,
Okay.
how much we have to spend,
Right.
or how,
Perhaps we move on to houses into homes. They've requested 15,000. We have suggested 10,000, and cities at 15,000. So that appears to be one of our greatest variants.
well, they can't get 10,000.
right, they have to get 15.
They have to get 15 or nothing, or more. But they only asked for 15.
They cannot get 10, how some other organization can get 0?
What?
If they cannot get 10,000, how you can recommend 0 for some organization? That doesn't make sense.
Again, I clarified this last month. I asked these questions last month before we even started. We don't have to fund an organization. They can get 0, that's no funds. But if they're going to get funding, they have to get a minimum of 15,000. That's in the city steps, is it, or, yeah?
It's in the consolidated
Yeah, the
plan.
consolidated plan, thank you.
I mean, obviously I was fine with giving them the minimum.
I'm giving,
That's what they asked, so.
I didn't recommend them, but I would give them but that was only because I was trying to do the budget, so
Right.
I would be okay with giving houses into homes 15,000.
I am too.
I would as well.
I agree with that.
Agree?
I think we should take out Prelude and put them at 0.
I agree.
Anybody opposed?
I mean, yeah, still.
Anybody other than Kyle?
Prelude is the, what are they called now? Community CRS. Well, half of their application was for something that we don't fund under this process, which is repairs, and the other half was for rent, I think, which is being funded through another organization. So I left them at 0. I put them at 0 because it's a late application. So I don't think we should be funding a late application.
I would agree with that.
No. Got to draw the line somewhere.
So I'm okay with upping RVAP.
What are they at? I can't read that, so you have to speak the
Where?
numbers out for
They
me.
asked for 30, staff recommendation is 28, and our recommendation was 26.5.
I'm okay with
I was-
putting them at 26.5.
What did they get last year?
26.7.
So they're getting a cut?
Oh,
I'm okay with putting them at, I'm okay with putting them at the 28 staff recommendation. This is, this is
yeah.
the group that
I'm okay, yeah.
that I absolutely find doing
Yeah.
work that no one else does
Yeah.
in town.
I'm okay with the 28.
And even possibly coming back, depending if we have extra money, and bumping them to 100 is what I have in the back of my head, but yeah.
Is anybody opposed to 28?
Horizons we had already agreed on.
And Inside Out,
This is a toughie.
They've requested 45,000. Our group is at 31.5 roughly, and staff is at 40.
This is a really tough one for me because I think the cost per Iowa City resident is huge. I also, I have difficulty with the fact that half of the services are provided to Coralville residents. I think that Iowa City is probably funding that service also. So I reluctantly, but, you know, with an objective mind, I'm going to recommend the lower amount for funding. Or at least I would support the lower amount.
The 31?
Yep.
And I also wonder, yeah, I had the same concerns, because it is a small number and it's, 432. At the same time, I understand where those numbers come from, because you do have people coming in with nothing, coming back from incarceration. The question about the Johnson County, Iowa City thing is what's tough, because I don't really understand, I guess I don't know enough about, when someone is getting out, how they're determining whether they're coming back, where they're choosing to live, because, we could fund this and theoretically, no one wants to come back and live in Iowa City, which obviously isn't gonna happen. I just don't know how, I'm guessing these numbers, just last year it was 42, and 31 is a big drop. That's a big drop as far as, yeah. That's 50 people or something that don't get served next year that got served this year, especially when we are 20% of their budget.
Do they get funding from other
Sorry.
Yeah.
localities?
Not
Yeah.
really. And actually, I'm going to, so their expenses were interesting because actually they had that other line item in there that was $340,000, and I believe that's their home that they've gotten funding for. So if you back that out, because that's not ongoing expenses for them, they are closer to a $160,000 budget, at which Iowa City is paying a third of it. And
33%.
Yep, somewhere along the line, I think we have to draw the line and say that their organizations have to diversify their funding, whether it's through fundraisers, special events, or, this might be something churches give to, I don't know, but I don't think that,
But there is no harder fundraising than trying to get.
No kidding.
Cons.
for what, well, drug addiction is, trust me, I know what's easy and I know what's hard, but, is Iowa City prepared to take on the lion's share of the budget? I have to say that I asked the question about whether or not, we should not be funding 33% of any program, as far as I'm concerned. It's too much money. And we've got to see if there's community support for it. They need to see if there's community support for it. And there's probably some way that they can raise additional money. I don't think it should be all Iowa City, though.
And when you were talking, yeah, and this is the one that they've gotten zero money from Coralville.
Yeah, and
Don't understand
literally half of their services are.
going there.
Yep.
So yeah, and I don't know how, does Coralville have a commission like this, or how are they, do they
I
have
think
a
this
fund?
funding source is pretty unique to Iowa City. I'm not super familiar with Coralville, but I don't believe they would have this.
Coralville also doesn't get home or CDBG money.
Okay.
Not as a,
But the United Way doesn't fund, they don't use that United Way application for funding for this kind of stuff?
yeah, they do.
Yeah.
I don't think Inside Out gets any United Way money, though, do they? No.
I don't think so.
But that's a process, Kyle. They have to become an agency
Yeah.
partner.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah, I was just curious, yeah.
Well, but we have $39,970 left of the budget.
Again, I do want to say that they do seem to be one of the only agencies that's providing this sort of service, and we are intending to be a relatively consistent source of funding. And the fact that we are a relatively large part of their budget, given they are local and they are providing services to the region, which we do benefit from, if we significantly cut that, and that significantly cuts their total budget, that's going to significantly impact their ability to provide a significant amount of their services, I suppose, which I do believe are important.
What's the history of their funding? What was their jump the year that the city took us from 400,000 to whatever, 700?
It's in, I think it's in your memo, but there was 1 year where all agencies got fully funded and they got a substantial increase from the previous year.
I know, but you know what that was based on? It was based on their ask.
Yeah.
So for instance, sorry, Barb, to bring this up, but I remember free medical clinic. You asked for what you thought you would get, which was 16.5, where other organization, if she were somebody else, she might, if she were me,
You'd ask for-
Barb,
you asked for
I say this
100,000.
in loving ways. If she were me, I would have probably asked for 30,000, and she'd be at 30,000 funding now, 30,000 plus over a couple of years. So I guess that's my point is, I get what you're saying, but literally we're funding that agency to 30% of their budget is coming from highway, and it's just too much. How can we justify that for such a small amount of citizens? I can't justify it.
So you want to give them the minimum?
Yep, I do. It's still a lot of money for their budget, agency budget.
When you say minimum, do you mean 15,000 or do you mean the lesser of these two recommendations?
The lesser of those two recommendations. Which was 30.
$31, it looks like.
So it's still a significant portion of their
Did
budget.
That's 60 less people they can help in the upcoming year.
so Becky, when you,
Or it pushes them forward to seek funding from someplace else. Maybe they go to Coralville and say, we're losing funding from Iowa City, and we're helping, half our program is for your citizens.
but when, I have a question for you, Becky. When you were the executive director of community, did you often see people who would come in that had recently been incarcerated?
I didn't,
You don't know?
I didn't provide direct services.
Because I think sometimes the people who are leaving the system go to shelter house.
That is true, too. Yeah.
I think that there's, there probably people who are coming out of the system who
I think they go
receive
anywhere.
services from some of the agencies.
I also do think that this agency is also probably providing, well, they're providing more intensive services than a lot of other agencies that are serving more people. What they're providing is going to cost more per person, just sort of as a result of what it is.
Well, then I go back to the scoring from my experience.
The Coralville, Iowa City thing is really at the crux of it for me right now. Because it is 104 Iowa City residents and 102 Coralville residents last year, and they got zero money from Coralville.
Yep.
And 42,000 from us, which was what was it, 20% of their budget?
Did they request any from Corvallis?
I do not know. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if that was information. Sorry.
And that's been a crux for a lot of people for a long time.
Yeah, 21, 22, 23, and nothing's changed. Yeah, Corva funding 0, 0, 0.
Well, and if you have,
I
Pat,
hate to hit them with a 50% reduction in services to Iowa City residents, though. I mean,
but is it really fair if just throwing out, let me see, back to pathways, that they get cut that much because they have to get 15,000, and then Inside Out Entry, who scored lower,
yeah.
gets, a lot of money. Not a lot of money, but more money.
I just think their starting point is wrong.
I mean-
I just don't think we should be,
And I will say, they also got 15,000 on my scoring sheet because they were in that 70th percentile.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
yeah.
it is a hard hit, though. I mean, but
Well, or, look at Habitat scored, and I know it's hard to score these because it's not always perfect information, but we cut Habitat.
yeah.
We could bump Habitat up to 3,000, whatever, because they asked for 30, right?
Right.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's move to the next one and see where we get. I mean, nothing's in stone at this point, and we
I'd move Habitat back up to 30.
Is there consensus for that?
I'm fine with that.
Can we go through the rest just and see where we're at?
Yeah, move up. What do you mean?
We still have, can we just get through the rest of the ones and then see
Oh,
what we've got
okay.
left over?
All right.
What did we say for Inside Out?
I think 15,
Leave it there for now.
Okay.
I thought we were doing the 31.
The what?
The
oh, you were saying going with the
31.
4 recommendation?
Oh, you were?
Yes, that's what I said.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm okay. I mean,
Yeah,
I still think it's high, but it is a drastic cut, taking him down to 15.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with just, yep.
I think I can be fine with that.
All right, 31. Even. How's that? Then we can still bump up those higher scoring applications if they were not.
ARC of Southeast Iowa looks like they asked for 30,000. We came up with 21,620, and staff said 22,400.
Oh yeah, why don't you bump them up to 22.4?
Yeah.
See where that takes us.
So here's one that, here's one that we seem to all agree on HACAP, that it should be closer to the 100% mark, which would be 27.5. And we were only off by $300?
Yeah.
I think they were.
There's his Head Start programming, right?
Yeah, Head Start.
Head Start programming, I appreciated that they have zero fund balance. They spend what we give them, and yeah, I was okay with that particular one.
When they don't have any fee for services, right?
Right. Yep.
Okay, we'll bump them back up.
Can we put them at 27.5 at full, or do you want to do 27.2, which was the commission?
I wouldn't do them full because of the score.
No, that's what I'm asking. I mean, so 27.2, which would
Yeah,
be
yeah,
the commission rec?
yeah. Oh, we're going pretty good here.
Dream City, they asked for 30. We suggested 15 as well as staff at 15.
This is where I have some difficulty, because as I said before, I think they're very similar to Big Brothers Big Sisters. They provide services to more kids. I know it's a new organization. What is their staff score at? Looks like 50.
50%?
Why did they score so low? Do we know?
Our scores aren't listed on here. We funded them at the minimum amount. Some of it was just, I think, lack of experience, the fact that they were a newer agency. They haven't received aid to agencies funding in the past.
Well, one of the problems that I had with the application is with new agencies, if their outcomes, if they didn't have outcomes, they could share with us. And so I didn't even try to, to score that, but I don't think I scored them that low.
I'm okay with 15.
I am as well. And I mean, it is 5,000, it's a 50% increase than they got when they're as an emerging aid agency. So, I mean, it is a step up in funding because they got 10,000 from emerging aid last year, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
Unless that was 2 years
22.
ago.
Yeah.
It might
so-
be 2 years ago. I don't
2 years
remember.
ago.
Well,
I was also just at the 15 for kind of the same reasons, but
I think I recommended 25 in funding for them because I did feel that they needed to be closer to what Big Brothers Big Sisters was getting, so. That's a flaw in our process, I think, but we can move on, I guess.
I'd give the rest of the money to free lunch.
What do you mean the rest?
The budget, we have $4,300 left.
No, you mean
Remaining to
adding it them?
allocate, adding it to free lunch.
No, I don't agree with that.
No?
I
Okay.
think that's part of the problem is how we've gotten here. Mary Ann is saying, oh, we've got this much money left over, let's give it to
I know, that's
this
true.
organization. No, I don't agree with that at all.
Okay, then we should move up to scores.
Are we done with, we haven't
Even if we did,
well, I mean, we're at free lunch now. I mean,
done Center for Worker Justice yet?
Nope.
Well, we plugged in 15.
but that was just when we were looking at.
We haven't talked
Right.
about it yet. And are we all in agreement with, why are we recommending 0 for CRS, formerly Prelude?
I thought it was because you said they were 5 minutes late on the application.
I know what my reasoning is. I want to hear everybody else, I guess is what I'm saying, is why are we as a group saying that?
Before we move on, is free lunch staying at 15?
For right now, I
Right
don't want,
now.
I don't want to.
As we're going through this, I would like to see free lunch get more than 15.
I would be okay with giving, as we have it right now, giving them what we have remaining. That would put them very close, basically right up to where the staff recommendation was, I suppose. Although I suppose that is more than within the individual score average.
It's exactly been the problem all these years is,
Low scores and they get more.
yeah.
That's the problem for all the
It's-
rest of the agencies.
Yeah, it just, oh, man.
Back to community and family resources. The reason I think that it's okay with me not to fund them is because I think it's a pretty recent merger with a much, much larger agency. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah. And I just think they have to get their feet on the ground here.
Well, I thought their ask was wrong. The other thing that concerned me is I looked back at the previous requests because they were saying they were 1 million or 2 million in the hole, and it was as a result of the merger, and
Yeah, it was.
but I found nothing. I went to GuideStar, looked at 990s for Prelude, saw no deficit like that, saw no deficit projection in the previous application for for legacy agencies, and so I just thought that the financials were
Right, yeah.
just way off. Plus, my problem with what they asked for is housing, and that was being funded elsewhere, the rental deposits. So that was the reason. But the biggest reason for me is they were a late application. And did the deadline not say on there that they had to be received by 5 o'clock? Yeah.
So I think we have a consensus on that. So, I'd give the rest of it to neighborhood centers.
I
They have a huge score.
we haven't finished yet.
I know, I'm just trying to move us along.
I think we need to go through each one.
Well, the only one that's the Center for Worker Justice. Yeah, I get the late thing, I get there was a technical issue, whatever it was, that caused them to be late. I mean, I get the deadlines are deadlines, but sometimes there's also, when, it is their first time doing
Well, and they had
the process.
and there was an explanation for that because they had to call United Way and United Way had to fix it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was their fault. I think it was IT.
Right,
Yeah.
and so, yeah.
Well-
I'm absolutely, like, for example, the Community and Family Resources formally put, like, the explanation that you two have just given as to why it makes sense not to fund them makes sense to me. Right, I did, like I said, I had everybody at 15, I think everybody, we at least had to consider. I'm okay with going with that recommendation because it makes sense. I don't get that for Center for Worker Justice. From personal experience, once again, this is an organization, really one of only less than half a dozen up there that I see coming through my door on a weekly, monthly basis, doing work that I can't get done by anybody else in town. Translation services, is a big one. Working directly with providers from the private sector side to help, especially immigrants who are having issues culturally and legally and just, working through the day-to-days of housing and food and all the other stuff. So I have a very hard time in saying, that they should not get the minimum. I mean, I do think it still comes down to their first-time year. I'm not recommending, I think they asked for 45. I think that's a big ask that I'm not comfortable saying yes to, but I absolutely think that as a new legacy agency, they deserve the minimum. That's where I came down on it.
Earlier, did we discuss the deadline being a set absolute? So if they missed the deadline, then aren't we going?
But it was not something that it was not at their fault for why the deadline passed.
Have you ever done have you ever done it? So you actually don't,
No, I'm just saying that Mariana just stated that was what we wanted.
That was my understanding. And
you apply to, have you applied to? So what they have is, they have sections, and each section has to be submitted. It takes a while so if you're late, if you're doing this at the 11th hour, you're going to have trouble getting it in on time.
And if it's your first time doing it, you probably don't know that.
Well, they did go to the training. I did call to see if they went to the training, so they went to the training, but if they didn't get started in time, yeah, it was a problem.
I'm okay with
I didn't get my scores in on time either, so.
You didn't. We know.
Well,
We know that.
Yeah, we know that. I wasn't happy about that, because I was at work when I got them.
Should all of my arguments be thrown out today because I did not make the deadline? No, the answer is discussions can still be had.
I considered proposing that Kyle.
Yeah. Well, I did too, because I think I worked really hard to get mine in, and.
So did I.
And it was hard to get mine in. I lost a lot of sleep, and I used lunch hours to get the work done. So I think it comes down to, for me, is it's that bottom line as an application is late. It's not unusual in the funding world that if you miss the application deadline, you don't get funded. That's a hard, fast rule with a lot of organizations. We've opened this up. I think it's giving Center for Worker Justice special treatment that they shouldn't give. If you remember, I argued for them getting legacy agency status. My argument is not because I don't support the organization. I do support the organization. But bottom line is they were late in applying, and I believe that they should not be eligible for funding because of that.
And I think, oh,
Hang on, with United Way, was that because United Way hadn't completed their piece of the puzzle?
no.
So,
Probably 30 organizations got their applications in on time.
so, I'm just thinking, and yes, they were just a little bit late, but could they not have worked on the application, a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks ahead of when they were working on it and they got complete? I mean,
Sure they could.
instead of saying, okay, we're gonna put it in on the deadline day, say, hey, you know what, if we put it in a week early, we're sitting good. So I don't really see.
But you're making the assumption that they didn't work on it or that they didn't work on it in advance.
Yeah,
of
we don't
trying
know.
that. I mean, we don't
But
know.
what I come back to is the scores that we as commissioners provided based on the applications that we received. And it's disheartening, I think, to agencies when they work hard on an application, they turn in a good application, they get a really high score, and then they get cut, and another agency that has a very, very low scoring applications gets, more. And I just think that's not fair.
Which I don't think that that's represented up there. I mean, I think the higher
No, I
scoring
think
ones
that-
have gotten the big
Except,
money.
well, except for neighborhood centers. I mean, I know they asked for a lot, but they had the second highest score, tied with community,
We didn't really talk.
and we only,
Did we really talk about shelter house, neighborhood centers, community?
well, we all agreed that they should
had
be
a high s-
funded.
Well, neighborhood centers, and I read the application about 4 or 5 times. I read it again this afternoon before we came, and they have traditionally, it looks like they've traditionally underfunded, underpaid their employees. I support, raising employees' wages, but they've got quite a fund balance. And we're setting ourselves up for, they're going to be this high, they're going to be, we've moved them up quite a bit in funding. I'm just concerned about.
Well, according to the budget, there's $4,300 left. So, do you want to give it to Center for Worker Justice? Do you want to give it to somebody else who we didn't fund fully, that's higher scoring?
Well, what are we doing for Center for Worker Justice? Are we leaving at
15,000.
15? Okay.
Which I'm fine with.
Well, I'm going to object to it, but
Okay.
I'm not going to, because it was a late application.
I'm fine
Oh,
with,
so you want them at what?
0.
0?
I'm fine with the 15 for the Center for Worker Justice. If you looked at the organization mission, it is unique among all these organizations.
I agree.
They've done something unique, so I would recommend them.
It is a unique
Around
mission
15.
statement, but they do more. I mean, I think the mission is much more narrow than what they actually are doing. And I'm not sure that that's the best way to manage.
What do you mean? Can you explain more?
I mean, I think they have to have a bigger mission statement, and I think they have to, figure out what their mission really is, and then do that. So that means they have to really, really, this is just my opinion, they have to really, really expand their mission statement.
To include all the
To do,
services
yeah,
that
or
we
to at least,
provide.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's good point. Yeah. But still, I recommend M15 because they are empowering a lot of marginalized and immigrant people.
I think I'm going to have to agree on that.
I'm okay with giving them the minimum. We could add the money to Dream City.
I'd support that, because I don't think we're funding them enough.
I would as well.
What did we do for Prelude?
0.
So why are we having a problem giving 0 to Center for Worker Justice?
That's a good question.
Well,
Well, I thought the discussion was not about the fact that they were late. The discussion was about the fact that their financials are not looking great from a transition into a larger organization. They don't have the need for it this year.
Okay, you're talking about Prelude now?
Right.
Yes.
And that was the conversation, right, that we had
right,
just
right.
before this.
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
What I said was, if I were going to recommend funding, or if I were not considering that they were a late applicant, I would look at the fact that they asked for, part of their ask was for repair of facilities, and that's not.
And rent deposit stuff,
And rent
right.
deposits, which is offered someplace else. However, my recommendation was 0 because they were a late applicant. So that's what I said.
If we don't follow that policy, then we're setting up a dangerous precedent moving forward.
Well, I understand that also.
I've said my piece. When we vote, I'm just going to object to that one.
Did we up Dream City?
Not yet. Is that what everyone agrees on?
4,300 there.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to propose we move Dream City to 25,000 and reduce the emerging agency pot.
What'd we get?
So let's see.
I'm okay with that.
That would take 5,700 away.
And then still give Center for Worker Justice 15,000? No?
We couldn't do both of those unless we took from
Well,
somewhere
no,
else.
right,
I don't think
so
we're going to win that. I think we're just
So
going to have to object.
24,300 would be the emerging A2A budget for this year. Instead of the 30. It'd be 24,300.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep. Could you, can you run down, what is the final recommendation for free lunch program? Because I know that one, there were a couple of other recommendations.
15.
15.
15, okay.
Yep.
And Horizons?
Horizons is at 38. RVAP was the other one that I thought was lower than I'd like, but
Well,
once again, there's at some point, we just keep taking out of ATA or out of emerging or, I don't know.
unless we follow the rule that the late application gets nothing, and then we've got 15,000 from CWJ.
Yep.
I could live with what we have now. I think the Community and Family Resources had so many more concerns. And I think, and I don't know what happened with the application. I know it's an online application, and I know it's not, it's tedious. And so I accepted CWJ's explanation of why it was late. I mean, it wasn't a week late, was it? Was it?
They were both, I think, within an hour.
Yeah, I
One was
mean,
15 minutes, one was 29 minutes.
okay, well, that, I'm okay with what we have up there right now.
No objections?
Well, my
So
objections are
this is-
noted already, but, I mean, I'm going to go with the consensus, but I don't agree with the late applicant being allowed to compete for funding.
So in January, we're just going to look at this again and vote on it.
Yeah, we'll put together something cleaner for you to look at, and you'll just nod and say yes, make your recommendation.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And these are just recommendations?
And then it would go
Now
to
the
council.
council's got to change it.
Correct.
The council can change it, yeah.
Okay.
And historically, it's been unlikely that they
make any
they
changes?
would make any changes.
So we're under consensus that we're satisfied with what we have plugged in for now and to move on.
The majority of the
Something to argue in
consensus.
January?
Yes.
There's a consensus for a majority of the
Yes.
recommendations for the agencies, but in the minutes, it's noted that I object to a late applicant receiving funding.
As do I.
Yeah. But, I'm not going to belabor the point.
Okay. For now, let's move on to agenda item 5.
Wait, there were other agenda items? What?
The
I didn't agree to that.
consideration of approval for the fiscal year 24 CDBG and home,
Well, there we are.
as well as the FY24 emerging aid to agencies application materials. Are there any requested changes on the FY24 CDBG slash home or the FY24 emerging aid to agencies application materials?
Does this have to be done tonight? Because quite honestly, I haven't reviewed them the way I would have liked to. It's just, we had a lot on our plate this past few weeks we lost a week in schedule because of the November, because of Thanksgiving. So we lost a whole week. Does this have to be done this meeting?
Well, but the applications are due January 30th.
Yeah, this process opens in December, at the
Yeah,
end of December.
We got to do something about scrunching everything in at this time, because it's impossible to do a good job.
Normally, the schedule's a lot lighter in November because we don't have the legacy aid to agencies every year, so this is a heavier year than normal.
Well, that brings up a question that I'm sorry I forgot to ask. What happens next year with legacy agency funding? Do we do this again? The recommendation?
No, they would just get a prorated amount, so we wouldn't go through the application process next
So
year.
they would get a certain increase to their...
If the budget increases, we expect probably like a 3% increase, then that we would spread
Okay.
that based on the current allocation.
Okay.
And I'm beating a dead horse here, I know, and I hate that expression, but it's the only thing I can think of. On these two applications, it says, no exceptions will be made for late applications. And so if that's the standard we're going to use for this, then it's a little,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, to be perfectly honest, if somebody were late for the next application, I think that they would have cause to make us accept it and recommend funding for it. So that's the
These
problem.
applications coming directly to the city, CDBG home.
Excuse me, I wasn't done. That's the problem when you start to go outside, you start to bend the rules, so.
Right,
Yep.
right.
Yeah, and I don't see it as bending the rules. I see it as a technical issue on the United Way site that resulted in a 28-minute,
We're on a
28-minute difference.
We're on a different agenda item.
Are there any requested changes on the FY24 CDBG or home and FY24 emerging aid to agencies application materials?
Can I give a quick update on, go ahead if you have a question.
No, I just had a comment about the application.
Okay, go ahead. When you're done, I'll just comment on the things that we've changed this year. It's mostly the same, but go ahead.
So, on the application, the applicant has to report the AMIs they're using, whether or not the recipients of the project would be at below 80, below 60, below, what is it? Is there 40 in there?
0 to 30, 31 to 50, 51 to 60, 61 to 80, and then over 80.
So now, it used to be that if an applicant said they were serving people below, between 0 and 30% AMI, that they would have to, that the city was going to monitor that they stuck to that. Is that still the case?
People still, I mean, the reporting is different based on the funding source, but people still have to report their beneficiaries.
I know,
So-
but it used to be on this city application, which was more restrictive than the home and CDBG rule, that if you said you were going to, everybody was going to be under 30%, then everybody in that project had to be under 30% to get the city money. Is that still the case? Or are you going to,
We do a lot of monitoring. I'm not sure if that's the question. you're-
Depends what we write into the agreement. It might vary based on what type of project it is. So we wouldn't necessarily, so say they were doing 2 under 30 and 2 under 50% AMI, we'd probably write the agreement for under 50% AMI for simplicity, but I don't know. It depends on what they're specifically targeting. I don't think we would break it up.
okay. And there's a score on that? So you get a higher score if you get 30 below? That's really hard for home projects. It's very hard to do.
That used to be more of an issue with the old scoring criteria before we revised it. This question could really sway a project. And I think the way it has changed during the last funding round, you get the additional points, but it's not the all-determining factor of who might get funding.
What happens is if it's a home project and you say it's a rental project and somebody moves in and they're under 30 and the next year they get a job and then they're between 50 and 51 and 60%, if the city said you have to have everybody under 30, then either the project's out of compliance or the people have to move. But the federal government says they can stay. So it gets a little bit wonky.
Yeah.
But you get a lower score if you say everybody's going to be below 80% because 30 is below 80.
So based on the application process that we just had and what we talked about is the leveraging money, could staff identify some areas of the application that you might want to give the commission some training on at the meeting so that we can come closer to scoring everything appropriately?
I would say the CDBG and home applications are pretty different. When we do the CDBG and home rounds, we do the staff summary sheet and we'll usually write out the calculation of leverage for you.
Okay.
The reason we didn't do that on the staff summary sheets for the aid to agencies was because the scoring criteria left discretion in there for you to determine if you wanted to score it a different way. So my thought on that is that the aid to agencies scoring criteria probably needs to be adjusted, but we haven't historically had an issue with CDBG or home. It's a little more cut and dry. Like home just flat out has different requirements. Like for leveraging, we, as a city, we have to have 25% match, which we usually do that through property tax forgiveness. But I would just say that they're two different issues.
I like the format.
A couple other things I'll mention about just things that have changed this year. It's mostly the same. We did try to simplify questions if we felt like they were duplicative, so people aren't answering the same question twice in different spots. Another thing that you probably saw change was the affordable housing location model is no longer a thing, so that's something that has changed in the applicant guide. Would you want to talk about the Affordable Housing Action Plan just briefly?
Sure. So the affordable housing location model was rescinded by council, so we no longer have that. Applicants won't have to comply by that. We did have a question that came out of the Affordable Housing Action Plan last year, where one of the city's goals is to encourage the distribution of housing and residential facilities throughout all neighborhoods in Iowa City. So what we plan to do was provide a heat map of where we have existing subsidized housing. It's not exact, it's just kind of like if there's clusters, they would reflect that. So we can kind of get an idea of if there's already affordable housing, like you would get additional points if there was not, you know, a lot of affordable housing in that area, I guess is how we were looking at that.
Which,
So it's just this one question, and it's just a little bit different than the location model.
and again, that's also fine. I will get on the record to say I'm really very glad the map is gone. But then again, if somebody does a low-income housing tax credit project and wants city home funds to do a pretty big multifamily project, then the heat map's going to get hot in that spot, right? So then, is that going to have an impact on anybody else for the next time?
I mean, it's not like the location model where we are prohibiting housing anywhere. You
Right.
might just get extra points if the location
If it's
that you're
not.
choosing does not have any other affordable housing.
Okay.
So it's more an incentive rather than prohibiting
Okay.
locating projects in certain areas.
And this is probably just a really simple question or answer, but when you keep talking about affordable housing and location, is that determined by who receives funds for tax credits? Or what if there's, I mean, are all the places that are affordable, are they all known by the city? And if so, then how do you get that information?
So we're looking at housing that is subsidized by the city or through federal funding. So we have that information, and we typically are monitoring those properties.
Okay.
And then we take it and put it in GIS and map it.
Okay, thank you.
One other thing that I was going to call out, just that was added to the scoring criteria, was 2 bonus points for applicants that are nonprofit housing developers in good standing. And again, that's something that came out of the Affordable Housing Action Plan.
Personally, I like the new application, but may I have a motion to approve the FY24 CD, BG, and home, as well as FY24 merging aid to agencies application materials?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda item number 6, staff and commission updates. Does staff have any updates?
Just one update from me. In the packet, you'll see there's a training opportunity for boards and commissions. I think it's in December. That's a free training. It's online on Zoom, and it just talks about open meetings, open records. They do it every year. I attended it last year just to listen, and it was, I thought, helpful and interesting. So I would definitely recommend that if you have the time to do it.
This is just within the city of Iowa City that the Zoom thing happens. Can you go in person?
I believe it's only online this year. It was last year, too. I don't think they've changed that yet.
Okay.
The flyer said just virtual training, so I
Yeah.
assumed it was just Zoom.
I think so.
If somebody wanted to do that and doesn't have the equipment, Can they go to the library or? Okay.
My house. Hook you up, get all three
I've
monitors
got it.
going, a couple
I've got the
cameras.
equipment. Thanks, anyway.
Do any commissioners have updates? On agenda, item number 7 is an adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?